Are we ready for a little bit of an adventure? Our accompanist is on her way, so she should be here very soon. But this first piece that you guys have been singing all month long ought to be stellar. So I'll give a starting note, right? And then we'll do what we've been doing. I guess I wasn't, Everybody will start with the first line twice, and then this group will continue singing the first line, and then yeah? You get the, yeah? 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Here we go. Welcome.
Our opening words today are "In the Spirit of Searching" by Reverend Joan Javier Duvall. In the spirit of searching, out of depths unknown, the spark of light ignites, and we are born. We enter a world, a universe, not of our own making. Our lives unfold in mystery and wonder. Questions abound for which there are no definite answers. And so we gather in community to be reminded of what is most ultimate and what is most sacred. In this spirit of searching and of reverence, let us worship together this morning.
Our chalice lighting is All the Lights of Heaven by Reverend Cynthia Landrum. For the wonder and inspiration we seek from sun and stars and all the lights of the heavens, we light this chalice. All right, we're lit. Welcome to St. John's Unitarian Universalist on this, the final day of 2023. We hope this year has brought you something of worth to carry into the next year. We hope 2024 brings depth, delight, and connection. We welcome everyone who is here in this room, as well as everyone who joins us online, now or in the future. If you are here for the first time or the 100th time, you are welcome into this sacred space we create together. As Unitarian Universalists, we are guided by the journey that we take together. This year has brought challenges as well as joys to our journey, and we remain on it together. If you are new here, we encourage you to join us for a variety of services and perspectives. Above all, no matter who you are, no matter who you love, you are welcome here in our religious community. Please rise as you are willing and able to join in our first hymn.
I invite you to join me in reciting our affirmation. This is the mission of our faith, to teach the fragile art of hospitality, to revere both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to witness to all that we must hold the whole world in our hands. Sharing our joys and concerns is a sacred time in our worship together. It is a recognition that our whole self matters. The joys, the sorrows, the delights, the worries, all of it that we bring with us into this room matter. Here at St. John's, we honor our joys and concerns by coming forward to place stones representing all that we carry into the sand that represents the many and unique parts of our beloved community over all the years we have existed. If you would like a joy or concern to be read, please leave them on the table. And if you are online, please enter a joy or concern in the chat that you would like shared, and we will read them from the pulpit. We place a final stone and light the center candle to represent all of the joys and concerns that remain in our hearts and those that have been expressed today. We have a couple of joys and concerns to share. I want to explain, I'm recovering from a cold, so I'm kind of staying back a little bit. So I appreciate those that have come forward to help. Online, we have from Amanda Toth, a joy that she has found St. John's in 2023 and has felt welcomed via our online services and programs. Welcome. Okay, please correct my pronunciation. Ken Hoyk is critically ill. So let us hold Ken in our thoughts and prayers. All right. May we hold these joys and concerns that have been expressed and those that are unexpressed in our hearts as we move through our day. I'm going to do the prayer and then we'll do the story, so it's just a little out of order from your order of service. I invite you into a spirit of prayer and meditation with these words by Reverend Teresa Soto. In this community, we hold hope close. We don't always know what comes next, but that cannot dissuade us. We don't always know just what to do, but that will not mean that we are lost in the wilderness. We rely on the certainty beneath the foundation of our values and ethics. We are the people who return to love like a North Star and to the truth that we are greater together than we are alone. Our hope does not live in some glimmer of an indistinct future. Rather, we know the way to the world of which we dream. And by covenant and the movement forward of one right action and the next, we know that one day we will arrive at home. I want to invite Ashley forward to offer our story for all ages.
Good morning. So our story today is about hope. Have you all ever hoped for something? Did it happen? Did it come true? Sometimes. Anybody want to give me an example? Something that you hoped for that came true? What about? Hope for a grandchild. Or a daughter. Anything else? Things that we've hoped for to come true. Hope for someone to recover from illness. Hope for a good outcome. Maybe a new job, maybe just to make a new friend, maybe for things to change in the wider world, or not change sometimes. Here, you want to take that? So what are these? You guys can take one. They're acorns. Why do you think we have acorns? How do you think hope is like an acorn? What do you think that acorn hopes to be? A tree. Okay, you're right. The acorn, but what do we hope the acorn to be? A tree, right? Okay, if I put the acorn on a shelf, I got those from the shelf downstairs. Is it going to become a tree? No. Or if we just, let it roll under the table over there. What would those acorns need to become a big tree? Sunlight and water? So they need soil, or they need to be planted before they've, lost their spark of life. Sometimes they need to be left alone. That's a really good answer. So our hopes are kind of like that, yeah? Because they start from something that we've imagined. Maybe if you're comfortable, close your eyes for a second and imagine something that you hope for. Something that you wish to happen. So just like those acorns, hold that hope in your mind. Just like those acorns, our hopes need things to grow. They need sometimes a little luck. They need care. They need attention. Sometimes they need to be left alone. They need time. Yeah. But the important thing is that we can't just do nothing with them, right? So, and they start with that imagination. They start with thinking about that thing, and then they can become the giant tree with action. So, there's one last question before we go downstairs. Would we ever get the big oak tree without the acorn? Are we going to get an oak tree if we don't start with the acorn? No. So what's that have to do with hope? We need the seed. Yeah. So hopes are like seeds. You have to start. Every great thing that anybody has ever done has started with somebody imagining something, having that idea, and then taking the action to make it grow. And that's the importance of hope. So we're going to go downstairs, and they're going to sing us out. Thank you very much for your attention. Liliana, do you want to help me light the shawl?
Give us a starting note and we'll just start singing with you. May your mind be open to learning. May your lips bring truth into the world. May your heart hold love and your hands do the work of justice as you go your way in peace. We'll just end it there. Just so you know, we just threw that out and I don't have the accompaniment. So, yeah. She was making up something. So thank you, Vera. Today, we appreciate it.
The offering that we take each Sunday isn't just a stale habit. It's an opportunity to recommit to this place and to these people. Our offering is an affirmation, a yes. When we give, we say yes to something we value. With our gifts freely given, may we say yes to the values of our faith. May our offering help us practice Unitarian Universalism within and beyond our congregation as tools to empower our mission. St. John's is committed to creating a safe and caring community, working for peace and social justice, and celebrating beliefs that respect freedom of thought. An offering will now be gratefully received.
Thank you. Our reading today is From Plum Blossom in Kitchen Table Wisdom by Dr. Rachel Naomi Raymond. Many years ago, in the midst of a shopping trip, I found myself in a store specializing in Japanese furniture, helping a friend who was furnishing his house. He had been rapidly taken over by, let me start over. He had been rapidly taken over by the only salesperson, a tiny woman in a kimono who had grabbed his arm and begun a discussion of Japanese paintings with him in a loud and intense voice. Without warning, the woman turned and moved toward me, pointing as she came. She took me by the arm and began to pull me through the showroom, encouraging me with little clicking noises and repetitions of, "Come, you come." I tried to shake her off, but for someone so small and frail, her grip was strong. So I went along, followed by my friend. She took us into a room in the back of the store, empty except for 4 scrolls, one on each wall, representing the seasons. Unlike the paintings in the showroom, these were museum quality. In one of them, an old and twisted branch bloomed with hundreds of tiny pink blossoms. The branch and the blossoms were covered with snow. It was exquisite. Leading me up to this, she said to me, you see, February, the plum blossom comes." In her odd, intense way, she told me that the plum suffered because it was the first. It bloomed early, in February, often still in winter, in the hard and the cold. She touched the snow on the branch with her small, arthritic hand, nodding her head vigorously. Looking intensely into my face and shaking my arm slightly, she said, "Plum blossom, the beginning. Like Japanese woman, plum blossom gentle, tender, soft, and survive." I puzzled about this for a long time afterwards. As a physician, I thought I knew about survival because, after all, I was in the survival business. I had known survival to be a matter of expertise, of skill and action, of competence and knowledge. What she had told me made no sense to me. It reminded me of something that had happened one spring day when I was 14. Walking up Fifth Avenue in New York City, I was astonished to notice 2 tiny blades of grass growing through sidewalk. Green and tender, they had somehow broken through the cement. Despite the crowds bumping up against me, I stopped and looked at them in disbelief. This image stayed with me for a long time, possibly because it seemed so miraculous to me. At the time, my idea of power was very different. I understood the power of knowledge, of wealth, of government and the law. I had no experience with this other sort of power yet. Accidents and natural disasters often cause people to feel that life is fragile. In my experience, life can only change abruptly and end without warning, but life is not. In my experience, life can change abruptly and end without warning, but life is not fragile. There's a difference between impermanence and fragility. Even on the physiological level, the body is an intricate design of checks and balances, elegant strategies of survival layered on strategies of survival, balances and rebalances. Anyone who has witnessed the recovery from such massive and invasive interventions as bone marrow transplant or open heart surgery comes away with a sense of deep respect, if not awe, for the ability of the body to survive. This is true in age as it is in youth. There is a tenacity toward life which is present at the intracellular level, without which even the most sophisticated of medical interventions would not succeed. The drive to live is strong, even in the most tiny of human beings. I remember as a medical student seeing one of my teachers put a finger in the mouth of a newborn and, once the baby took hold, gently lift him partly off the bed by the strength of his suck. That tenacity toward life endures in all of us, undiminished. until the moment of our death. Please stand as you're willing and able to sing hymn 1020 in the blue teal book.
How many of you have seen one of those tenacious plants that break through the cement? Yeah. The smallest, fragile life that pushes through the most impossible circumstances, determined to grow anyway. I think that we human beings are driven by the same need to push into the impossible. Since the beginning of time, human beings have plunged forward into new experiences and new situations with the unexplainable determination of that most tiny plant. As human beings, we throw ourselves into formidable situations, often without even being aware of how impossible it should be. I was thinking about this recently as I rewatched the movie First Man. Does anyone remember that? It's about Neil Armstrong, came out in 2018. I adore stories of space travel and the desire to explore and understand not just our Earth's mysteries, but the entire universe has inspired us since the beginning. Before modern civilization existed, we watched the stars and the moon that moved through them. We felt the call to look up. When the Roman Empire rose and fell, we looked into space and saw something beyond our understanding. Even in the Christmas story, we hear of ancient wise men, likely Zoroastrians from the Persian region, who studied and followed a star, hoping for new understanding and a changed world. It is a direct experience that we share with all of our ancestors. It is hope, that unexplainable, undefeatable hope that has driven us to explore and understand the world around us. It is that hope that refuses to let us give up when something doesn't make sense, when it seems like hopelessness is crashing in and robbing us of any belief in justice and mercy. Without that hope, without that drive, we would still be a small, localized species. The human belief that we could be the one to discover what is over the next hill and around the next turn has driven us forward, even at times into danger. Fabian Gottlieb von Bellenhausen and Michael Laurez discovered the continent of Antarctica. Amelia Earhart explored much of the world by air. Edmund Hillary and Tenzing Norgay were the first to reach the top of Mount Everest. William Beebe and Otis Barton were the first deep-sea divers. As these people explored, they hoped for something. They were driven by the belief in themselves and what they could offer the world, that they could find something new and valuable to offer. John F. Kennedy spoke a little bit about how fast we as humans have moved in a speech in 1962. He said, "No man can fully grasp how far and fast we have come, but condense, if you will, the 50,000 years of man's recorded history in a time span of but half a century. Stated in these terms, we know very little about the first 40 years, except that at the end of them, we had learned to use the kind of animals to cover them. That about 10 years ago, under this standard, man emerged from his caves to construct other kinds of shelter. Only 5 years ago, we learned to write and use a cart with wheels. Christianity began less than 2 years ago. The printing press was this year. And then less than 2 months ago, during this whole 50-year span of human history, the steam engine provided a new source of power. Newton explored the meaning of gravity. Last month, electric lights and telephones and automobiles and airplanes became available. Last week, we developed penicillin and television and nuclear power. And he said, and now if America's new spacecraft succeeds in reaching Venus, we will have literally reached the stars before midnight tonight. This is a breathtaking pace, and such a pace cannot help but create new ills as it dispels old. New ignorance, new problems, new dangers. Surely the opening vistas of space promise high costs and hardship, as well as high reward. He is right. Anytime we reach out to explore the mysteries of our universe, we face risk and reward. We moved into the unknown with such hopeful determination that it was inevitable that we would turn our sights to the moon, the companion to our questions, our hopes, our curiosities, our wishes. Kennedy also said these more famous words: "We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one which we intend to win, and the others too." Kennedy was asking a nation awash in chaos to look together to the stars, to explore a new mystery, to step into hope together. Consider that for a moment. Even as we might feel despair or worry about the state of our world and wonder if we can ever truly bend it towards justice, we in some ways echo the state of the 60s. The world was poised on the knife's edge during the Cold War. The Cuban Missile Crisis happened a month after Kennedy's moon speech. The Vietnam War was raging, although at the time of the speech, the United States hadn't reached our highest level of participation. The draft and the protests against the war had already started. The civil rights movement was pushing the country to consider its legacy of white supremacy and oppression. Arrests and bombings terrified those who called for equality. A few months later, the Freedom Riders would take their lives in their hands, even as they hoped desperately for change by traveling in integrated buses across state lines. By the time we were to head to the moon, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. would be assassinated. During all of this chaos, this transition, uncertainty, and pain, at a time when it seemed like the most impossible idea was that this country could turn its sights together toward anything, Kennedy called us to look up, to look out, and to unite on a quest to land a human being on our nearest celestial neighbor. Gene Kranz, the NASA flight director for the Apollo missions, said, "We had a total of 20 minutes of manned space flight experience. We'd never been to orbit, and we were challenged to go to the moon. Our president had the confidence to issue this challenge and the confidence that we could do it." Can you imagine that? We had never been to orbit. And he said, "Oh yeah? Well, let's go to the moon." It's a little like mastering addition and having your teacher say, "Okay, tomorrow, calculus." The United States took Kennedy's challenge, but suborbital flights were a long way from landing on the moon. First of all, scientists weren't entirely sure that humans could survive in space, that we wouldn't suffer some sort of mental or physical breakdown once we lost contact with our planet. The Mercury program taught us we could reach space and survive, step one. The Gemini program from 1965 to 66 was designed to help us figure out what it would mean to be in space for a longer period of time. Eugene Cernan, the last man to walk on the moon, was scheduled during the Gemini program to complete a 2-hour spacewalk in which he would assemble and use a jetpack. NASA didn't quite understand how spacewalks worked at this time. There weren't handholds on the outside of the craft, so every time he turned a dial, he would fly back into space, held to the ship by a tether. When the sun disappeared behind the Earth, as it does every 90 minutes when you're in orbit, his visor would fog over and he couldn't see. Although the mission itself was a failure, NASA learned a lot about spacewalks. When hope drives you forward, even failure and mistakes can become fuel for the future. In 1967, with only 3 years left to fill the then late president's call to land humans on the moon, NASA turned its eye to the Apollo program. Tragedy struck when the Apollo 1 astronauts died in a fire during the test of the capsule. NASA didn't send anyone else to space for 18 months. And despite calls to just discontinue the program, we moved forward. When Apollo 7 launched in October of '68, it gave us little more than a year to accomplish that long-hoped-for goal of getting someone to the moon. When we sent astronauts Neil Armstrong, Edward Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins into space on Apollo 11, no one was quite sure what would happen. NASA didn't know what landing on the moon would be like, despite sending several missions to get an up-close look. The trip was so dangerous that the men couldn't get life insurance. Knowing their families would need money if they didn't make it back, the crew came up with a scheme, and they signed several photos of themselves which they figured would sell for a lot if they died on the moon. When the Apollo 11 crew got to the moon and the lander separated from the main vehicle, the problems began. Communication was going in and out. And at this point, there were 3 possibilities. They would land safely on the moon, they would abort the landing, or they would crash. When communications returned, Mission Control decided, okay, we're going to continue. Then communications went out. When they came back, Armstrong reported that the computer was giving off a 1202 alarm, which Rod Pyle says means, I have too much to do, so I'm going to stop, reboot, and start over. Some of us have felt that alarm ourselves, right? Had the reboot happened, mission rules would have called for an immediate abort, as their ability to navigate the landing would have been compromised. The computer was receiving more data than it could handle. So they prevented the reboot, which allowed them to continue. Think about that for a moment. Faced with the choice between safety and the mystery of what might be on the moon, the astronauts continued forward. When Armstrong and Aldrin looked out the window of the lander, they discovered they weren't where they were supposed to be. Rather than the smooth ground they were supposed to land on, they were over an area with large car-sized boulders. As they began looking for a smooth place to land, they pushed their fuel to the 30-second warning for a mandatory abort. To make the landing even more complicated, there was so much dust being kicked up by the descent that Armstrong was using boulders poking above the dust to navigate a safe landing spot. But we know what happened next. The Eagle reported in. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. How many of you remember that? Yeah. It gives me goosebumps. Only the generation who was there, who understood every potential failure, can truly understand the anxiety and hope wrapped up in these moments for everyone. Imagine or remember in that moment that across the entire world, no one watching knew what would happen, or if they would even survive the landing. Plans had already been made to get Michael Collins home alone if the Eagle crashed onto the surface of the moon. Gene Kranz says, it took us a couple of seconds to really realize that we had made it. And then the people in the viewing room started stomping, and I just mean cheering and clapping and stomping their feet. When Armstrong stepped on the moon, his iconic words united the world for just a few moments. That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind. There's some disagreement here. Everyone on Earth at the time heard that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. However, Armstrong insists he said, one small step for a man, that it wouldn't have made sense otherwise. One of the early activities of the two men was to place a plaque that will remain on the moon until the end. Here men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon, July 1969 AD. We came in peace for all mankind. There were still many things that may have gone wrong once they walked on the moon. Any number of them could have killed or stranded Armstrong and Aldrin. A few things did go wrong. The president at the time, Richard Nixon, had his speechwriters prepare a speech to be given if some incident ended up stranding them on the moon. Here are the opening lines to that speech. Fate has ordained that the men who went to the moon to explore in peace will stay on the moon to rest in peace. These brave men, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Buzz Aldrin, know that there is no hope for their recovery, but they also know there is hope for mankind in their sacrifice. But none of the glitches actually stopped the astronauts from returning home. Hawaii even made them fill out customs forms, which you can find online. The men reported their trip started in Florida, and they made their way to Hawaii by way of the moon. On their forms, they declared moon rocks. And because we didn't know what was on the moon, NASA didn't know if there were dangerous microbes that the crew might bring back. For that reason, the Apollo 11 and several crews after them were quarantined for 21 days after returning from space. We now know that everything was okay. We now know that we can send people to the moon and bring them home safely, and it would be all right. But they didn't know that then, and they strove boldly forward anyway, because they allowed hope to guide them forward into mystery. Our travels in space have advanced science far faster than we could have expected. Their need to understand, their curiosity, their hope that it could be understood, changed history. As our eyes turn toward Mars, our next closest neighbor, we know that we must boldly go to the stars. Our nature will allow nothing else. We can't resist the unknown. My beloved spiritual companions, the universe is full of mystery, and life is full of hope. It is hope for what is possible and for what might be that drives us forward into the mystery. As we move forward into the new year, may we draw from the courage of those who have gone before us. If you ever doubt your abilities and the possibility in what we can achieve together as a community, look at the moon and remember. When humanity decided it was going to go, we had never even entered orbit. We had no idea what we could achieve. Here at St. John's, we journey together, perhaps not into space, although we can talk about it, but into the deepest parts of the human heart and mind, and out into the unknown of our community and our world. And as we journey, we can take risks, not knowing what will happen, but knowing we are working together toward a common goal, and knowing that our journey makes a difference, even if we fail. If we can reach the moon, imagine what we can do together. May it be so. Amen.
If you could please look in the back of your order of service to the announcements. I'll just mention a couple, and then Rob has an announcement. The next Partner Church Lunch is January 21st, and there is a sign-up board up today, so please consider bringing soup or bread, and please consider coming and eating on the 21st. Our Mitten and More Tree is collecting hats, mittens, scarves, socks, and more to help the immigrants at the Willows Project, through the Willows Project, so please, and it will be up until next Sunday, January 7th. Rob?
We will have choir again on January 4th, but on January 11th, we'll have choir practice. It's a Thursday evening, and for anybody who is filled with this overwhelming desire to come and join us, or not, come and join us. We'll rehearse a little bit, and then we'll have a little social gathering, pizza probably, or something like that. So if you want a soft introduction, test the waters, and then continue to come or not, that's your choice. But January 11th, please think about it. We'd love to have you come and join us. It's a lot of fun. And even if you're like, I don't read music, if you can like match a note, we'll work with that. Okay? Perfect. And now please rise and bow to your spirit, and we'll sing 350, The Ceaseless Flow of Endless Time. And I'll ask Vera to play through it from beginning to end one time for us, please. Does that work?
Go in hope, for the arc of the universe is long and we can bend it toward justice. Go in courage, for together we have the strength to confront injustice in our daily lives and the larger world. And go in love, because a holy and generous love is both the reason and the means by which we transform our lives. Go in peace, go in love. Amen.